Florida. Tanned, toned, tropical, trendy, captivating, creative. Crisscrossing culture and cuisine, the colorful and the carefree. A place where the Art Deco meshes with the metropolis, where rural America resides right alongside regal America. Florida, to so many of us, is flat out fabulous. But there is another face emerging that is not so flattering. Hidden beyond the palm trees and pristine beaches, a poison is seeping into the Sunshine State, pushing the state into a state of crisis.
It's overwhelming.
It's euphoric.
It doesn't care how much money you have.
It's so easy to make.
It's taking over the state of Florida.
It's all about, the high.
It doesn't care what your mom and daddy does.
It's all throughout the schools.
It's starting to be an epidemic in their area.
It's absolutely the most frightening drug that I've ever seen.
It goes from euphoria to anger, and resentment to hate.
It's the most painful thing that you can imagine.
So I was tweaked. I was bad. I was in my own little world.
It affects everyone.
It's a living demon.
We call it the devil.
The day we announced that we were doing the creating the meth unit, we worked our first meth lab, and from that point, it's like it went crazy. We've located and dismantled over 100 meth labs, and we've removed over $6 million worth of meth and meth oil from the street. What concerns me the most is the availability and the fact that someone can leave their home, go to the local drugstore or Walmart and buy the materials to manufacture meth with. It's just unbelievable that they can do that. It's the only drug where they can run down to Walmart and get their shopping list filled and go home and make it.
The one thing that I would say about methamphetamine that they ought to be aware of is that it's different from other drugs in that when they actually find the chemicals, the equipment utilized to manufacture the drug, they need to look at those chemicals and equipment as hazardous waste, not as drugs. So the potential for harm to their police officers and to the community goes up greatly because of that. And the chemicals and equipment need to be handled different than what normal drugs like cocaine and marijuana and heroin would be treated, because it is hazardous waste. They use a lot of solvents, they use a lot of reagents, catalysts. Stuff like red phosphorus is very flammable. Chemicals, solvents like ether are very flammable. Chemicals like anhydrous ammonia are usually always carried in non-approved containers. Even the clothes that the defendants are wearing are contaminated. And normally in the process of destroying a lab, we actually will take the clothes from the defendant and we'll destroy the clothes because of contamination that they've been exposed to.
In our area, we're seizing small amounts of drugs, small amounts of cash. We don't seize any property because it's all contaminated. We don't seize their houses, their cars, anything, because it's all, we can't use it. It's all a risk to health for us to touch it even.
You have two different types of methamphetamine basically being manufactured here. You have the small toxic labs, which are the methamphetamine is being produced by individuals that can go down to Walmart and other retail stores, Home Depot, buy their chemicals over the counter, make small amounts of methamphetamine, and you have the large Mexican national groups that already have their trafficking organizations in place to bring in cocaine, marijuana, and other drugs. They're just bringing in methamphetamine now to appease the users. You have a high user population here. You have the availability of the chemicals.
We're going to hit this stuff head on. The secret to winning a battle or a war is, number one, is to have the right battle plan. Number two, be willing to fight for it. And number three, just going and doing it. And the bad guys should actually be afraid of law enforcement. They should worry about law enforcement because we're going to put them in jail and we're going to stop them from doing what they're doing. Should be a respect or a fear that when they see a deputy sheriff driving down the road or near their home, they should worry about it.
We had a new sheriff come into town who was more aware of the meth issues and how involved it truly was in the panhandle of Florida. When he took office, he created this meth task force. He selected 6 officers from our agency and put us just working meth. That's all we do. We don't work any other drugs, we don't work patrol, we don't work criminal investigations, just meth, that's it. We've had them in cars, in apartments, in houses, in very affluent neighborhoods. We've had them on shrimp boats, in trunks, in backpacks. We're having people cook this in the woods now, trying to get away from it. Everywhere, anywhere you can imagine. I've been there 17 years. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. You just can't imagine that there are meth labs next door, across the street, or, you know, we've had them across the street from 2 of our officers' houses, or next door. They're everywhere.
There have been some tremendous numbers of cases and seizures. We truly have an epidemic, and I think we're seeing it more and more obviously in more rural areas, and it's taking over the state of Florida. It's overwhelming.
We've got them moving from one area to the other. We're finding them in motels. We're finding meth labs in cars. We found one $500,000 home, a gated community. It's not a matter of if we're coming, it's a matter of when we're coming. Once we announced this, the fact that we're going to hit this stuff head on, we had people start calling. Our Crime Stopper tips line, it just went crazy.
We've been educating the public to be aware of, you know, what to look for as far as chemicals or smells or suspicious activity, and we're getting a tremendous response. We're getting tips coming in every day.
We put programs on in churches. We went to schools.
It's a big campaign in our area. It's been heavily promoted in the media. We do classes and send out flyers to all the big retail stores, Walmart, Target, Kmart, Family Dollar, everywhere that sells the chemicals necessary to do meth coke. We're trying to educate them in what to look for and telling them, if you got people coming in buying this, and this, you know, yeah, they're not doing anything illegal yet, but it's an indicator. Anybody can own these products, but when you buy it all at one time in these quantities, it's an indicator that they might be cooking methamphetamine.
We've had classes with parole and probation, Division of Family Services. These are people that's our first-line people who are out in homes and are seeing these things. And we've had them come back and say, hey, I think they got a meth lab. And we've responded and we found a meth lab.
All too often we have children that are at these sites who are also around the chemicals and the hazardous waste
the children must be removed from the residence and turned over to the proper authorities.
This has become a big issue in the labs we're working in, and probably half of them we're having children living in the homes where they're cooking the meth labs. The chemicals, the gases that come off the cooks settle into wherever they land. They settle in the carpet and the couch and the walls, everywhere that you can imagine. So they do the cook when the kids are gone. The kids come back and start crawling on the carpet, and it kicks all these particles up. If there's a DCF worker there, then they're obviously children or elderly. There's somebody in the house that needs taken care of, and they're being exposed to chemicals that are going to kill them, that are going to hurt them severely. Take it serious. These kids are developing, it's a serious time in their life, and they're taking in just poison after poison into their system because their parents are addicted to drugs. There are chemicals when you walk into a house that are common. Anybody can have a can of acetone. Anybody can have denatured alcohol or a couple books of matches. But if they have all these different things in one place and piles of it, it should at least cause you to be suspicious. Probation officer, DCF, postal employee, anybody that goes to people's houses legally, and especially agencies that can actually go into somebody's house, they need to be looking for these chemicals, these products that are used in manufacturing methamphetamines. These children don't have a choice of where they live. And that's a biggie. That concerns all of us a lot. A maid of the motel, when they go in and there's heavy chemical odors in a room that they're cleaning, or they find, soda pop bottles, plastic bottles with hoses sticking out of the top cap of it. Right there, you have paraphernalia used to manufacture methamphetamine. A neighbor can look for any unusual activity, unusual smells, unusual, I don't want to say trash, but products being put outside. If you live in a residential neighborhood, or your neighbor is just Joe neighbor, if you start seeing cans of acetones and alcohols and the products that we see traditionally in methamphetamine, if you see large amounts of that, boxes, cases of matches, anybody can have a gallon of acetone to clean their steps with, but why somebody who doesn't have any steps would have 10 gallons of acetone makes you wonder. If you start getting the heavy chemical smells at all hours of the night, if your neighbors seem not to be sleeping for weeks at a time, or there's high activity at night, sudden activity, if all this is new, I can't say that they're doing anything illegal, but it might be something to bring to the attention of a local law enforcement agency. And a lot of this stuff is trash that they'll leave after they finish cooking. If you find these things, call your local police agency. All of this stuff can hurt you. All of this stuff can cause either acute illnesses or chronic long-term illnesses, depending on what it is. It can even cause death, some of this stuff.
As the methamphetamine laboratory problem grows in the state of Florida, the individuals who are responsible for cooking this methamphetamine are having to find places to dispose of the chemicals and the hazardous waste. All too often we're finding it on the sides of roadways, by rivers, by lakes, where they're simply throwing it on the side of the road. Law enforcement as well as individuals must be familiar with the chemicals that are associated in case they run across them on the side of the road.
If you see these things that look wrong, the glassware with residues in them, coffee filters, that's a big one. Coffee filters with red stains in them, coffee filters with white stains or a white powder caked onto it. If you see any of these things, it's time to get local law enforcement involved in it.
If you see these indicators of a clandestine methamphetamine laboratory, the things that you need to remember are that you need to contact immediately individuals that are trained in handling hazardous waste. You need to avoid contact with the chemicals and equipment. You need to avoid smoking or eating anywhere near the chemicals or equipment.
There's going to be exposure. I mean, that's just a given.
We're getting calls every day from people, and people coming in to talk to us about, hey, I've got a problem and I'd like to talk to you. I have a pastor coming in to talk to me about one of his sons that's on meth. The mission is to make the citizens of this county feel secure and make the criminal element feel insecure.
Before Frank came, there was no meth labs being posted. A lot of people didn't really know anything about it. It's a living demon. I've never faced anything like crystal meth. Frank kind of started uncovering everything and started saying, you know what, we need to make these people out here aware of what is going on. If this explodes, we're in trouble.
We react on every bit of information we get. The orders are, go to the house and knock on the door and say, I'm from the sheriff's office and we have information you're making meth here. You would be surprised at the people that say, well, I figured y'all were coming sooner or later, come on in. Yes, I'm telling you. We call it a knock and talk. And actually we've changed the name to knock and smell because we can actually smell the meth inside. We try to send informants in. We try to get other information. We do drive-bys. We steal their garbage at night because these guys will make their meth and they will throw their garbage in the garbage bag, put it in the garbage, and sit it out by the road, not thinking that law enforcement's going to be digging in the garbage. And we're able to get enough information to get search warrants for it. And that's something that we proactive. That's the atmosphere that I want to create in our county. I want to make them feel uncomfortable. And if they don't like it, guess what? They can leave.
It is so cheap and so easy to make. When I first started, I was assisting someone who was cooking it. But within a couple of months, I was cooking it. It didn't take long, watching somebody else. You're going to figure out how to do it yourself. Why make them all that money? Within 6 months, I was making it. And then you're rolling in the dough, you're making it, you're selling it, you're making a killing. All right, let's go. We used to load up in a little two-door car and drive from here to Panama City, and we would shop all day, 2 people. We would come home with the trunk and the back seat and the front seat loaded with probably 200 boxes of matches, 200 boxes of pills, and we would hit every dollar store and Winn-Dixie in Panama City and load up on all this because you could only buy so many boxes at a time. We were staying up 7-10 days, but it was still rigorous. It was a lot of work. We would cut the strips, the red strips off the back of the matches and put them in acetone. We'd put in usually gallon milk jugs and shake it until it come off itself. It was hard. We had to really work for our money. You make a lot of money. On a 15-gram batch, it might cost you $800 to make it, and you're making $100 a gram.
I wanted to know exactly what problems we had in Bay County. So we sat down and we pulled records and we looked at things, and it just like, for instance, our burglaries and thefts. So a lot of the reports you read after we made an arrest, it went back to the fact that these people were stealing this to buy meth with. And so I started thinking, well, wow, this is, we've got a lot of that. Basically, we were seeing other crimes were related to meth. And now we still have the crack problem and the cocaine problem and the other problems, but the meth just stood out. So I thought, well, this is a perfect time. Why don't we get on it, get ahead of the game, because we knew it was coming. So I decided, well, let's see if we can stop it. That we may have a chance here that we can do something about it for a change.
It's a very basic recipe. You have one person that learned this on the internet or learned it out west or something, and he came back and he taught his buddy how to do it. And we're seeing it done the exact same way from one lab to the next. There are 1,000 different ways to cook meth. There are little different things you can do differently. We're seeing the exact same methods. So one person started in our area and taught the next guy, and then he taught a couple of his buddies, and it's just a recipe. A user, an addict, can be his own supplier. You know, he doesn't have to import anything from South America or bring it over the Mexican border. He can go to Walmart or Family Dollar and set up his meth lab for $50.
Everybody that you know has a pocket full of it. It's all throughout the schools.
People, the first thing they say is, it'll never happen here, you know, and before you know it, it's here and you don't even know it.
I watched 3-year-old children pulling matches for their dad, you know, and they were proud. They were showing off. The younger girls, you know, and the pornography and the things that go on. 13 and 14-year-old girls trading their bodies. It causes you to do things that you would never in your life imagine that you would do. It allows you to do that. I guess they say it destroys your inhibitions, you know. I don't, it's horrible. We call it the devil. In the beginning, it's all about, you know, the high, it's all about the fun, the sexual high that you get or peak. That's probably has a lot to do with 90% of the reason why people start. You have everything that you want, you know, you're living above your means, and then you start using more, giving away more, and you're having to hide and sneak because the law, you know, knows who you are and they're after you, and so the money starts dwindling again. You know, the dope starts going away, and you just start living like trash. We lived in people's sheds, anywhere we could get, you know, that anybody that wanted to cook, and we teach people how to make it. And we moved from place to place, no running water. It was awful. I traded my wedding ring. I traded everything that I owned. Lost everything that I owned. My family, I deserted them. They didn't know where I was for months at a time. Everything that ever meant anything to me, I destroyed it. I lost it. Any relationships that I had, I was married for 10 years. I lost my husband. I was raped and had an abortion. You can't get off of it on your own. I mean, you can get on it all by yourself, and you'll think that it's just the party of a lifetime. But once that fun starts to begin, just as quick, the bad is coming, and you don't know it until it's too late. It went from a big party to my death sentence. I've attempted to commit suicide several times. I didn't have any legal problems, and in 1 year's time, I was arrested 3 times, jailed 3 times, and I'll have 7 felony counts on my record for the rest of my life. 7 felony counts that won't go away. I'm dealing now with kids, you know, 13 years old, as young as 13. We've had them arrested in Holmes County as young as 10, who weren't only using but dealing for their parents.
It's just like taking a kid and beating one. I mean, these are users who are addicts, and that becomes their sole concern in life is manufacturing or getting this drug in some manner. They don't care about personal hygiene, eating, taking care of house, or taking care of their kids. The kids are suffering in horrible, horrible conditions. Every lab we do, and we're finding kids that are about half of them, every lab we do that has kids, we charge them with child abuse or child neglect. Whatever we can do, whatever the law allows us to charge them with, we arrest them.
We forget about the other victims, who are the mothers and the fathers and the brothers and the sisters and the children of these people that's addicted to meth. These are the people in our community that are suffering. These are the people that are worrying about, you know, is my child going to come home tonight? Is he going to be dead? Is he going to be in jail? Is someone going to kill him? I mean, these are the things, the trickle effect that we don't think about.
The number one drug leading to violent crime is methamphetamine out there. The meth user can be awake for 3 days, 4 days, 2 weeks, whatever. These people are up for weeks, and their volatility, their emotions are on a roller coaster. They can turn on you in a heartbeat.
Methamphetamine users are going to act very irritable. They're going to act very aggressive.
The violence we're seeing on the meth is, you know, somebody on meth just attacking other people or having problems with a neighbor and just going off and attacking them.
Remember that the individual that you've pulled over that had the clandestine methamphetamine laboratory in his vehicle is going to be very irrational and possibly very aggressive. The methamphetamine also will have him have a very irrational and disassociated thought process. These are things to consider when approaching and dealing with the individual.
The longest I ever stayed up was 14 days. And back then I was drinking Michelob Light and eating cream curl honey buns. I was walking death, and I looked like it. I was tweaked. I was bad. I was in my own little world. I had no idea. I was talking to people who weren't there, shooting at people off of my front porch with a .357 Magnum that weren't there. It was driving me insane. I would walk around the yard talking to myself. I would talk to the air conditioner and could hear it talking back to me. When I had the pistol on my porch, there were just camouflaged people lined in my yard, and they were coming to get me, and I was going to kill every one of them before they touched me. And I believe if anybody had actually been there, I probably would have killed them and not even known. You could just see them. You could see them crawling on your skin. You could feel them, and just pick. I have scars on my face, these white circles. I dug holes in my face. I woke my ex-husband up one time in the middle of the night, and I had a straight pin stuck through my cheek, and I was pulling my face out. Blood was running down my neck. I had this huge hole dug in the side of my face. I was begging him to get that bug, get that worm. I didn't know what it was. I could see it.
What I've seen of meth addicts is they're going to have red marks, red bumps all around their skin where a couple things happening. One, the iodine is coming out of their system, out of their body. The body is processing it by pushing it through the skin. They get what's called crank bugs. And basically what a crank bug is the nerve endings are getting real sensitive. They start scratching. When you talk to them, they can't sit still. They're always moving. They're scratching until they just start bleeding. They look really, really nasty. They look thin and look like they have measles almost. The chemicals in their bodies start attacking the interior of their teeth, so their teeth are starting to rot and fall out.
The drugs, you know, and the things that they do to your mind, the paranoia, the hallucinations, it's a wonder. I didn't kill myself, you know, many times before. The first time it was euphoric. It was wonderful. And it stayed that way for a couple of months. I mean, it was a party drug. But within a couple of months, we were staying up 7, 10 days, drinking little or nothing, eating nothing. I never ate. I got down as little as 85 pounds. But I still thought I was having fun. Like I said, it's euphoric. That makes you feel like you can conquer the world. Whether it's fixing problems in your marriage or your relationship, it does wonders to start off with. But all those good feelings before long turn bad. I mean, they sour. It goes from euphoria to anger, you know, and resentment, to hate.
This drug has affected as many families as probably crack cocaine has. But this drug does not, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter where you live. And what we've found in the community is there's so many people that's affected, but they're embarrassed because they're a good family and their son was a good son or their daughter was a good daughter. They don't want to tell anybody that their son or daughter or husband or wife's addicted to this drug. So we find that nobody really knew what the problem was because nobody was doing anything about it.
Law enforcement was not capable of handling the problem years ago to handle a methamphetamine problem in the state of Florida because they weren't concentrating on a methamphetamine problem. They were dealing with the Colombian traffickers, the people bringing in marijuana, the people bringing in cocaine, and methamphetamine wasn't actually an issue at that point. It has become an issue now, and it's probably about the fourth most abused drug in the state of Florida.
Before he ever started using any drugs, he was just very, very level-headed. He's always a good kid. And everybody loved him. He's jolly, he's so funny. It's a lot of fun to be around. And he was just a genuinely good person. He worked for a construction company here that builds condos. And he worked with them for a long time until he got involved with the drugs. I noticed some little things like, well, he wasn't sleeping anymore. Whenever I would cook, fix dinner, he wouldn't come over. He'd come over, but he wouldn't eat. And he was real fidgety all the time, just like, real hyped up. He was like not eating. They were staying awake for, anywhere from 7 to 10 days at the time. He's a big boy. He was wearing a size 54, and he was home for 11 months when he died, and we buried him in a size 38. I wish the people that made the drugs would wake up and see what they've left families with. It's absolutely the most frightening drug that I've ever seen, because it totally takes their ability to think like a human being anymore. The level of being so paranoid that he would come in my home during the day and he would want me to close all the blinds. It was always like there was somebody out there. There was always somebody out there. Whether it be the people he owed money for the drugs, or it would go from that to, well, the police are after us, or, it was just such a horrible paranoia of everything. If 2 white cars in a row passed my house, they were watching him. I can remember about a month or 2 before he passed away, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he knocked on my door one morning. And when I opened the door, he was standing there. And I won't ever forget the look on his face, because he looked at me and I said, "Keith, what are you doing?" And he looked at me and he says, "Mama, I just need a hug." And by that I knew that he knew that it was really bad. And things were really bad, out of control. I think he knew that he couldn't outrun it. I feel like in my heart sometimes that he ended it simply because when I would talk to him about it, he would tell me himself, he'd go, "Mama, I'm so disappointed in myself." But he says, "I'm so disappointed because of what I put you through. It's a living demon." And I mean, we faced heroin, crack, cocaine, you name it, we faced it. But I've never faced anything like crystal meth. Unfortunately, Sheriff McKeeton came here after my son was gone. When he first came here, it was like, well, we're going to do some things. We're going to get out here and we're going to beat the streets and we're going to clean it up. When I would pick the newspaper up, I would sit there and I would read it and I would cry, because there were so many labs going down. Like finally somebody was doing something, that there was actually something happening, and it might save some other kids, because, all of Keith's friends are either in prison for 25 or 30 years that he was running with, or they're still out there doing meth. And we've buried 2 of them since he's been gone. they come by on Mother's Day, and they're still high, and I always tell them, you need to go down and sit on Keith's bench at the cemetery because you're headed in the same direction.
For 17 years, I've been a cop on the street. You know, I can see my threat. You know, it's a guy coming at me. I can fight him. I can. In the meth labs, you can't see it. You know, these are chemicals that are attacking you from the air, from all around you that you never see. You know, that's the biggest threat. The biggest threat is 20 years from now, am I still going to have a liver and kidneys? You know, from all the exposure I've had over the last 100 labs I've been in 8 months.
We'd received information of a guy that was selling meth out of a motel room. We obtained enough information to get a search warrant, which we did. When we executed a search warrant, it ended up being a lab in the motel room that was actually in the cooking phase. He had it cooking, left it. When we go in search warrants, we go in the rooms, we have to clear it, get everybody out that's there. We try to get in and get out as soon as we can, and then let the guys that are actually certified, which is what we're doing now, go in and make the assessment. Where I turned through the kitchen was where it was cooking at, and I didn't know it. When I went through the kitchen, all of a sudden I was in the middle of a bedroom that was just full of smoke, ended up being the vapors off the cook. I heard somebody holler, get out of the motel room, and as soon as I walked out and took my first breath of fresh air, it was like everything just seized up, and I couldn't get any air in at all. We knew meth was going to be there probably. We had the information enough to get the search warrant, but it ended up being an actual lab when we got in. He had started cooking, had everything, it was actually boiling in the kitchen, but he had left it there, and apparently it had been gone for a while, so it had actually boiled out and was turning into phosphine gas, which is deadly. Started dry heaving, vomiting. I was still coughing real bad, but still went to the emergency room just to get my blood work done. They drew the blood and everything was fine, nothing got harmed in it. It could have been deadly. If we'd have been there maybe an hour later, it could have been to that point where several of us really could have got hurt bad, because there was at least 6 of us that went in on the initial entry. We actually had no idea it could have been as dangerous as what they were whenever we were dealing with it. You've got different chemicals that we didn't know was combustible, well they are, it's flammable. Certain canisters that after being opened into the air or left for a while develop certain compounds or organic material on it that's the slightest little movement can blow them up. There's certain chemicals, it's just a slightest shake of a jar or a can and they'll explode.
There have been numerous cases in the United States over the past 10 years where agents have not handled chemicals properly and have been injured. There have been troopers that have pulled vehicles over and were doing routine searches and were exposed. In one particular case I know of, to anhydrous ammonia that was maintained in a thermos bottle.
The effects of these chemicals may not have an immediate effect on the individual. It may have long-term effects and could result in injuries several years down the road.
That's why training is so important when it comes to individuals that are working in areas where methamphetamine is a problem.
Because this drug is such a new phenomenon for the state, particularly in those smaller counties, we can't do enough to train our officers. It's such a volatile chemical.
A firefighter's mission is to save life and property. And that may be their first instinct when they arrive at a house fire is to save life and property, and that's what they're there for. But somebody needs to be aware of the potentially additional hazards that they're going to find at a meth lab site. If firefighters arrive on the scene and there are indications that there is potentially a meth lab present, you have to take into account the potential for explosive vapors in the residence. So what kind of exposure do you really want to have your men exposed to? Is it worth the lives of your firefighters? There may be toxic vapors or potentially explosive vapors present that they wouldn't necessarily see in normal structural fire.
In the far corner of the bedroom on the floor, there was a Coleman stove, a camper stove. You don't imagine those in a bedroom. And it was obvious that it was being used because the flames came from the Coleman stove up the wall. The curtains were on fire and part of the ceiling was on fire in that room.
Now, some of the more common chemicals that they're going to find are solvent cans containing coma fuel, acetone, denatured alcohol, toluene. They may see a lot of starting fluid cans giving an indication that there's ether present. The danger with the ether is that under the right atmospheric conditions, 1 gallon can explode with the intensity of 5 sticks of dynamite. It's when you're finding those chemicals in a bedroom, in the middle of the living room, on a kitchen counter.
And if I had been looking for it, there were several cans of Coleman fuel on the kitchen counter. There were bottles of muriatic acid and just these type of things that you don't normally see in a kitchen of a house.
Propane containers, gas cylinder containers outside of a residence, those are indications that potentially there may be a methamphetamine lab in there. There are a lot of fires that firefighters respond to. They fight the fire, they put the blaze out, and they leave without actually recognizing the fact that there's a methamphetamine lab there, or has been one there to initiate the fire. Once a fire has been put under control and you have evidence that there's a meth lab there, or suspicions that a meth lab is present, then law enforcement needs to be called. So what you have is actually a crime scene that needs to be processed by those officers that have the training and knowledge to actually do that. They just need to be aware of strange types of odors, activity at strange hours of the night, because meth cooks, what they will do is they will run around all day long getting their chemicals and then spend all night long manufacturing the cook, which is just opposite of what normally is taking place in the neighborhood. So just be aware of that type of strange activity. At the scene of a meth lab, they may actually be trying to direct firefighters away from the scene and telling them that they have it under control and that they don't need the fire department. You may find them trying to fight their own fires. You may also have them asking you not to notify law enforcement. If there are injuries, they don't want emergency service to respond because they don't want these injuries reported to the local hospital. You'll have the occupants not only not wanting you there, but they may be running inside not to save their valuables or pets, but they'll be running inside to save glass jars containing liquids or glassware. Because of the mobility for these meth labs, they're moved around in vehicles all the time, and there are a lot of traffic accidents involving these meth cooks while they're moving these meth labs around, and very often the firefighter is the first one to arrive at the scene. So there may be not only an accident scene there, but you have a potentially toxic chemical waste site right there in front of you. At traffic accidents where people are carrying jugs containing liquids, glass jars containing liquids, running them out into the woods to hide them. We've actually had firefighters report back to us that while they were fighting the fire, people were running inside of the house, pulling out containers containing liquids and taking them out into the woods to hide them. Firefighters and EMS, they both need to be able to spot the indicators for meth labs. So when they're in these locations before law enforcement, they can be aware of the hazards that may be present, and then they can modify their actions accordingly. If there are injuries at the scene of a fire and EMS or paramedics are responding, then they're treating people inside that have been potentially contaminated. So you have their clothing are contaminated. Once they wheel them into the ambulance and once they wheel them into the emergency room, there's potential contamination there. So if somebody is not recognizing that there is a methamphetamine lab, there could be cross-contamination without any awareness that it's taking place at all. Firefighters, when they're fighting a fire, have respiratory protection with the self-contained breathing apparatus, but the turnout coats that they use may not provide the protection that they need for toxic vapors. Exposure by absorption is a real possibility at these labs. And in 2000, there were fewer than 50 documented injuries to law enforcement responding to methamphetamine labs. In 2003, that number soared to over 140. So they're putting their own lives at risk by just trying to save lives. In the United States last year, there were over 16,000 meth lab incidents. So the importance of the training cannot be understated.
Greatly lacking in any type of training with meth labs. I mean, there were some things 3 foot inside that front door that if I would have been thinking about it, would have gave it away.
Even if you're not seeing meth labs presently in your community, take my word for it, they're coming, they're going to be there. You need to have the training to be able to recognize these indicators.
We have had information that we've had booby traps in homes.
We actually had a lab that we did up in Bay County where we found an actual lab going, and the subject that was in the house told us about another guy he was involved with that was manufacturing methamphetamine that had a booby trap. It was, he described as one of the plastic containers that close up top and has like the teeth that go together, and the subject that had it had taken 2 sawed-off shotguns and placed them in there, so when whoever opened it up felt the receiving end of it. That particular subject called off an investigator's name, who it was meant for.
The people are dangerous, and not long ago we arrested a guy that actually told us if he had been awake that we would probably have had to shoot him. He had weapons, he had ammunition, and we were able to get in while he was asleep. He crashed. He'd been up for days and days using meth and cooking meth. We're seeing a lot of video surveillance systems set up in homes where people are actually surveilling us. We just did a meth lab up in the edge of Washington County last week. They had infrared video cameras and surveillance cameras, and we walked around out there probably for 20 or 25 minutes before we even realized that we were on camera. It's so simple. You cannot make chocolate milk without chocolate. It is so simple, and all we have to do is do something about the sale of ephedrine. It is so simple. The only thing that people are using it for, probably 97% of the use of Sudafed, is to make methamphetamine with. We know that. So why don't we do something about it? Remedying it or actually doing away with it, because what is it good for? A cold, congestion. They make other medicines for that purpose. Sometimes we create illusions about problems that are really not problems. Instead of fixing the problem, we spend too much time trying to figure out what the problem is and what we're going to do about it and who's going to do it and who's going to be in charge of it and who's going to get credit for it. And that's one of the problems we tend to do. Instead of someone saying, we got a problem, do something about it. That's the problem I see with a lot of programs that we start, is the fact that, well, let's have a meeting and let's talk about doing this. We spend more time having meetings and talking about doing things than we do actually doing it. That's the part that bothers me, is the fact that we actually have an opportunity to do something about this epidemic. I think our community would be where a lot of other communities are right now, stunned, waking up like in a bad dream and realizing that, gosh, we got a bad problem and we've got to do something about it.
Absolutely 100% better off because of Sheriff McEachin. Because I feel like that he is, he's in it for the long haul.
I would be dead. God is the only thing I believe that, my being arrested and having that time to clear my head and stop and think, because I wanted out for a long time, but I got in my life to such a point, that I couldn't I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't forgive myself for what I'd done. And so I was out to destroy myself, and this was the best way to do it. You know, it went from a big party to my death sentence. Out of 16 years, this is the first time I've ever tried to quit and did not fight the desire. In all the years that I've used and the time that I was clean and the treatment centers that I went to, the times I've been to detox, I think I was missing the 12th step, you know, which is to give back what you've been given. The program that we've started has helped me, but turning to God and to the churches and to people, you know, who want to see you do better and having the opportunities that I've been given, you know, had a lot to do with it. I go into the jails now and, you know, talk to people who are in and try to help them to be able to look at things differently, you know, before they leave. God's using me. I know the power of prayer, you know, it's just an amazing thing. But I've had a lot of people praying for me for a long time, and I think I had to go through the things that I did to get to where I am.
My advice is to find out everything you can about meth. Find out what meth is, find out what it does to you, get educated on it, go to your local law enforcement, encourage them to do something about it, because it's there. We may have a chance here that we can do something about it for a change.
If there are any communities out there that haven't been touched by it, believe me, it'll be there.
The best advice I can give anybody is to stay away from it. And if you can't, you've got to find it in you to ask for some help.
The law enforcement community must accept the fact that it is coming. It doesn't read county line signs. It spreads and it's there. And if it's not there like it is in here, it's coming.
Those criminals, the bad guys out there, really need to know that we are dedicated, that we're focused on this, that we intend to put them out of business, that the gloves are truly off.
I think we're ahead of the game. I think for once we're actually ahead of the game.
Absolutely 100% better off because of Sheriff McKeeshan. Because I feel like that he is, he's in it for the long haul.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to win it. We're already winning it.
In L.A., a woman was convicted of second-degree murder because of giving her infant child tainted methamphetamine breast milk. Okay, that sickens everybody in law enforcement. It destroys our communities, and more importantly, the children, the lives that are lost because of the children. When you go in one of these labs and you see child's toys or baby clothes, you can talk with any law enforcement officer from Arkansas to Los Angeles that eats you alive. And that's why we have to continue to fight this battle one lab at a time.